When the internet began, bulletin board services, or BBS, became the first online communities of the so-called information superhighway. Using their phone lines, people logged in from all over America to talk about sports, games, movies, and on one BBS in particular, share their ghost stories. Over time, those communities all went dark, except for one lone server that continues to operate somewhere in an unknown part of Pennsylvania's Rust Belt. A relic of the 1990s, veiled in mystery, it is a digital archive of humanity's strangest encounters with the unknown, as told by the people who experienced them. My name is Brandon Schexnayder, and you are listening to Fear Daily.
Subject: The Office. User: What the Hum. Posted April 13th, 1997.
When I pulled into the lot this morning, Greg's car was already there. That old green Taurus with the cracked bumper and the proud dad sticker half peeled off. I remember thinking it was strange because Greg's never in before 8, and it wasn't even 6:30 yet. The sun hadn't come up all the way, that washed out blue light stretching across the asphalt. I parked a few spaces down and sat for a minute, drinking what was left of my gas station coffee. The driver's seat in Greg's car was empty, but there was a fog on the inside of the windshield, like he'd just been sitting there. When I walked up to the door, I saw his keys hanging from the lock. Not just the office key, though, his whole ring. Truck key, house key, that little plastic tag from the Y he goes to. All of them just hanging there, swaying just a little. I figured maybe he came in, dropped something, and went back outside. I called his name before I opened the door, expected him to yell back something like, "You're early too," but nobody answered. The lights were off, and the whole building was quiet. You ever been inside an office before anyone else gets there? It's weirdly empty, like a stage before a play starts. No copy machine humming, no phones ringing, no air from the vents, just the buzz of the fluorescent lights warming up. I left the keys where they were and walked down the hall. Greg's office door was open, his computer on, green screen glowing, cursor blinking. His coffee mug sat beside the keyboard, still half full. His chair was turned out like he'd just stood up and walked away. I checked the break room. Empty. The bathroom. Empty. I even called his name again, louder this time. My voice sounded strange, kind of flat, like it got lost in the air. I told myself maybe it'd gone out to get breakfast, but his car was still outside, and his keys were right there in the door. That's when I noticed another car in the lot. Dana's little red Corolla. It hadn't been there when I arrived, I was sure of it, but now it sat parked neatly beside Greg's. I didn't hear it pull in, didn't hear anything at all. Dana's our admin assistant. Always on time, always the first one in after Greg. Her office light was off, but her coat was on the chair, her purse on the desk, and her coffee mug sitting next to the keyboard. The steam was gone, but the smell was still there. I stood there staring at it for a long time. Everything looked exactly how it should have looked, except she wasn't there. That's when I started to feel it. That pressure you get when something doesn't make sense and your brain's trying to pretend it does. I picked up her phone and listened. No dial tone, just a soft hiss. I turned on the little AM/FM radio by her desk and spun the dial, but it was all static. I checked the wall clock. The second hand wasn't moving. I tried to shake it off. Maybe they both stepped outside. Maybe there was a delivery, but Greg's keys were still in the door and Dana's purse was right there. And nobody leaves their purse. By 7:30, the sun was up and the parking lot looked washed out and bright. That's when I noticed there were more cars out there. Hall's pickup, Amy's Honda, even the delivery van, all parked straight, lined up like usual, but I never heard them arrive. Not once. I put my hand against the glass and looked out across the lot. The air looked thick somehow, still like a photograph. The trees behind the fence weren't moving. Not even the little branches. No birds, no cars, nothing. Behind me, the hum from the lights got louder. It wasn't that normal electric buzz. It had a tone to it, low and steady, like something alive. I shut off one of the fixtures, but the sound did not stop. I could feel it in my teeth, and then I heard typing. It came from Greg's office. Light, fast, like someone hammering out a memo. I walked toward the sound, slow, and leaned across the doorway. His computer was on, same blank screen, same blinking cursor, but nobody was there. The sound stopped as soon as I looked in. I said his name, Greg, but I got nothing. Down the hallway, there's this painting. Cheap print, a little bridge and some trees in the fall. I've passed it every day for 6 years. This morning, though, it looked darker. The shadows under the bridge weren't shadows anymore. They looked like water, rippling. I blinked a few times, but it didn't change. When I turned back to the window, I thought I saw shapes inside the cars, just vague outlines in the driver's seats, people sitting still, watching. I blinked and they were gone. The clock on the wall still read 6:41. My watch said the same. The second hand had not moved at all. Then I saw something shift between the cars outside, just a flicker. I ran to the door, threw it open, and stepped out into the sunlight. The air hit me like a wall. It was thick and heavy, like the world was underwater. There wasn't a single sound, not wind, not traffic, not even the crunch of my shoes on the pavement. I tried to yell Greg's name, but my voice didn't come out right. I could feel it in my throat, but it didn't go anywhere. It was like the air wouldn't carry it. I took one more step and the hum vanished completely. The silence was so complete, it hurt. My ears rang from how empty it was. I turned in a full circle, no movement, no sound, nothing. When I stepped back inside, the noise came back all at once. The hum, the lights, my heartbeat. My voice caught up half a second later, echoing down the hallway like it didn't belong to me. And that's when I knew something was wrong. Not just weird, wrong. I went into the bathroom to wash my face. My reflection looked normal, pale, sweating, but normal. Then I waved and it waved back, but a beat late. Just enough of a delay to make my stomach drop. I said my name out loud, and the echo came half a second later. I could feel my pulse in my neck, but it sounded like it was happening somewhere else. The hum got deeper. I could feel it in my ribs now. Like, it wasn't coming from the building anymore, it was coming from me. I stumbled back into the hallway and looked again at the painting. The shadows were moving now, slow and smooth, and there were shapes walking inside them, blurry like people underwater. One of them looked like Dana, another maybe Greg. I said their name, and for a second the shapes turned toward me. Then they kept walking down under the bridge and into the dark. Now I'm sitting in Greg's desk, typing this on his computer. I don't remember turning it on, but it's on. The keys are warm, the hum is steady, everywhere at once, like the whole building's breathing. Outside, there are more cars. Everyone's cars, even mine. I don't think they disappeared. I think I did. I think I came in too early before the world woke up and slipped somewhere I wasn't supposed to. Everything looks the same, but it's not. It feels like a photograph that hasn't finished developing. If anybody reads this, tell my wife I came in early today. Tell her I made it to work.
Subject: Holcomb Family Farm. User: Outta Dodge 24. Posted October 1st, 1997.
I started working for the Holcomb family back in August of '91, just outside of Ottawa, Iowa. I've got about 200 acres of corn and soy. Nothing fancy, just enough to scrape by. I was 22, broke, and sleeping in a single-wide trailer behind the grain bins. The pay wasn't great, but the work kept me busy, and the Holcombs fed me dinner most nights, which counted for a lot back then. The old man, Frank, was one of those hard types who still wore coveralls from before the war. He walked like his knees were sandpaper and didn't talk unless he had to. His wife, Ruth, was kind enough, though she always looked tired, like she hadn't had a full night's sleep since Nixon. They had a son who'd moved to Omaha to sell insurance, so it was just the three of us most days. Behind the barn sat an old corn dryer they hadn't used much since the 80s. One of those tall metal beasts with rust stains running down the sides like dried blood. We fired it up that fall because it was too wet to let the grain sit in the bins. The thing rattled like a jet engine when it started, and the heat rolled off it hard enough to make your eyes sting. The first time I noticed the smell was about a week in. Burnt and sweet, like wet hay and old sugar. I figured a raccoon had crawled into the vent and cooked itself. When I told Frank, he just shrugged and said, "That dryer's older than you are. It smells like that sometimes." The smell didn't fade. It got worse. Every night around midnight after the generator wound down, there'd be this sound, a long, wet, dragging noise coming from behind the barn, like a feed sack full of grain being hauled across the gravel. Sometimes it was faint. Sometimes it was close enough to set my teeth on edge. I'd open the trailer window and listen until it stopped. Then I'd convince myself it was nothing. Wind, maybe, or a raccoon scrounging through the trash. Then, one morning, I found half a raccoon under the dryer's grate. Not mangled, sliced, clean down the middle, like something had peeled it open. The ribs looked polished. I brought it to Frank, and he said it must have fallen in. A week later, we found a calf out by the north fence line. Its legs were stiff, eyes gone, lower jaw missing clean off. Frank said coyotes. I didn't argue, but the dirt around it wasn't torn up. No paw prints, no drag marks, just one deep trench that led back toward the dryer. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that smell, that low hum from the metal when the burner shut off. I decided I'd stay up after we finished drying the next load and see what I could see. It was cold for October. I could see your breath even standing close to the dryer. Around midnight, the generator coughed and sputtered and finally quit. The air went dead. No crickets, no wind, just silence. And then I heard it, the dragging again. Closer this time, coming from the far side of the barn. I ducked behind the combine, shotgun in hand. The smell hit first, hot, sweet rot like corn syrup left in the sun. And then the dryer door creaked open. I remember the sound clear as anything, metal scraping against metal, slow and careful, like someone trying not to be heard. It came crawling out. At first, I thought it was a man, maybe some drifter looking for a place to sleep, but the way it moved was not right. Too fluid, all elbows and shoulders. Its arms were too long, hands dragging along the gravel as it pulled itself into the open. The skin was pale, almost yellow and slick like wet husks. When it straightened, it was tall, taller than me, taller than Frank by a foot. The head was narrow, stretched tight, the mouth running wider than it should have. Its eyes were nothing but two pits that caught the moonlight like dull metal. It was holding something, a stalk of corn, the end of it still glowing red, burning without smoke. The light from it flickered across its chest, and that's when I saw the ribs open, hollow like the inside of the dryer. Steam rolled off it in little bursts, same as the grain when you shut the heat off too fast. I raised the shotgun and fired. The blast lit up the field and let out a sound I'll never forget. Not a scream, but a hiss that cracked in my ears like hot oil. I fired again, but by the time the smoke cleared, it was gone. The door to the dryer was wide open, swinging. Frank came running with his lantern, cussing the whole way. I told him what I saw, but he just looked at me with that tired, hollow stare farmers get when something's wrong, but they can't afford to admit it. It must have been a shadow, he said. You're young. Shadows look bigger at night. The next day, the patch of corn behind the barn turned black. Perfect circle, maybe 20 feet wide. The stalks had bent inward, like something had pushed them from above. When I touched one, the whole thing fell apart in my hand, dry and hollow. Frank said it was fungus. Happens sometimes. But I saw the way his hands shook when he said it. A couple nights later, Ruth swore she saw someone walking by the window, said it looked like a man carrying a lantern, except the light was too bright, too white. Frank told her it was me, but I'd been asleep in the trailer. By the end of the week, the dryer stopped working. Every time we tried to fire it, the pilot light sputtered out. Frank decided to leave it until morning. That night, around 1, I woke up to a heavy thump outside. I pulled on my boots and grabbed the flashlight. The beam caught the edge of the dryer door. It was open again. Steam poured out in waves, thick as fog. Something moved inside. I could see the corn shifting, the metal walls flexing like something breathing in there. I wanted to run, but I just stood there, rooted. Then a hand pressed against the inside of the glass portal, long fingers scraping down the metal. It wasn't human. The skin was pale and blistered like old wax. The fingers left smears of something dark that hissed when it hit the ground. The door slammed shut on its own. The latch clicked. The dryer roared to life. Even though the generator was off, the air around it shimmered from the heat, and that sweet burnt smell filled the yard. I ran to the barn, pounded on the door till Frank came stumbling out. When he saw the glow, he froze. The dryer's heat gauge was climbing past red. The fans were spinning, pulling in air that whistled like screaming. And then it stopped. Just went dead. No hum, no light. The gauge dropped back to 0. Frank and I stood there until the sun came up. When we finally opened the door, the corn inside was gone. Not burnt, gone. Just a ring of black residue in a hollow space that felt cold enough to see your breath. Frank didn't say a word. He just went back inside, called his son, and told him to come haul the dryer out to scrap. The next day, he told me I should head home for a while. Said there wasn't much work left anyway. I packed up that afternoon. That was just a few nights ago. I've been sleeping in my truck at the old way station on Highway 75, but I can still see the glow from their property in the distance. It's faint, just a pulse of orange light through the fog. Every few minutes, it flares up and fades again, like a slow heartbeat.
Fear Daily is an independent podcast hosted by Brandon Schexnayder and written by Brennan Storr, with Joanna Smith serving as the consulting editor, audio production by Rachel Boyd, and sound design by Southern Gothic Media. This podcast is a work of fiction. Names, characters, places, and incidents are either products of the author's imagination or are used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or to real events or locations, is entirely coincidental. Ad-free versions of Fear Daily are available now on your favorite podcast apps. For more information, visit feardaily.com. But move fast, before the server goes offline.